Hey, how's it going, everyone? Before we get into this next episode, I want to give a quick shout out to continued supporter of the podcast, being Seth Roy of North Mountain Goshawks. And for those of you that are in the market for a new hunting partner for next season, particularly a parent-reared North American, Russian, or Finnish goshawk, definitely give Seth a holler. He makes great game hawks, and pretty much everyone that I know that's flown one of the birds that Seth has produced has been extremely happy, and I'm sure that you will be as well. So don't hesitate, get on that list, hit him up at ostringer3@gmail.com, fill out the form at northmountaingoshawks.com, or send him a message on Facebook at North Mountain Goshawks. And I also want to extend a big thank you to our listeners at the Extreme Performance Outdoor Network and Houndsman XP podcast that generously donated some items to all the people whose lives were just upended out of nowhere by these storms recently. And I know that they had to have found at least some relief from your generosity and kindness, and it really probably went a long way towards making just a terrible situation at least somewhat more bearable. So thank you all again very much for that, and that's another big reason why I'm really happy to be a part of a network like this that, as I've said before, not only tries to give back to causes that really try to preserve the rights of hunters and houndsmen across the country, but also try to do things to help out others in need whenever occasions like this happen. And like I said, thanks again so much for your support and also for your kindness, and we hope you continue to listen and tune in and have fun with us. Now, on to this next episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast.
So in 2013, I was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. It's hereditary in my family. It's taken many generations of my family. I was diagnosed in 2013. I went on dialysis for probably 5.5 years, on the transplant list as well. Several people tried to go down and get tested. The falconry community was so supportive. Several Texas Hawking Association members went down and got tested to see if they were a blood match. But like I said, it was overwhelming support from the falconry community when I went through that.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Chronicles podcast, and we are back in Texas again for another episode that was recorded earlier this year at the Texas Hawking Association meet. We might be in Texas for a little bit after this episode as well. I need to get the rest of the episodes that I recorded earlier this year for the THA out so I can continue to progress to some of the other episodes that I recorded in other parts of the country earlier this year and onward. So anyway, that being said, our guest for this episode, Jay Lehmer, is another guy that has been in falconry for a long time, has a lot of history in it, and also had to overcome a lot of adversity with his own personal health. And I think this is another really great example of another falconry feel-good story where, even though we all have our differences in such a small community, when we decide to come together and help each other, we can really accomplish a lot. So I really hope that you all enjoy this story and these experiences that Jay had, and we're just going to jump right in. So here we go. So did you have a chance to get out much this morning, Jay?
We did. We flew 3 birds, and we're back here by 10 o'clock.
Well, that's a good day usually. Yeah. Three birds. And when did you guys start? Right at daybreak?
We started right at sunrise. We left here before the sun came up and got out to the ponds right at daylight.
Cool.
Before the wind kicked up.
Yeah. No, that wind, it just ruins everything, doesn't it?
It does. And it blows out here pretty good sometimes.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It started kind of, I don't know, it really kicked in, about mid-morning for us too. And then it just started afterwards, it just sucked. I mean, it really, I don't know, it cuts through you.
It does.
Yeah.
It wasn't much wind when we flew early, so it wasn't bad. We found plenty of ducks to fly, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it can, like I said, it can kind of make or break a day, unfortunately.
It can.
Yeah.
I know for us at home, like a day like today, we probably just wouldn't flown. Yeah, I mean, I can understand. I don't know, like for the long wings and stuff like that, it can make, I don't know. Sometimes it's not as big of a deal, but for the dart hawking and stuff like that, it's just not as.
Some of the birds handle it better than others as far as the long wings go. Some birds don't handle it too well, but other birds seem to fly a little better with more wind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, how long you been flying birds?
I received my apprentice permit in 1975, so 49 years.
49 years. That is a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
I started when I was 15 years old.
15?
When I got my apprentice permit.
Wow. Yeah, and I'm assuming then, so, I mean, were all the rules and regs already in place then, or did you?
They were being put into place about that time. I had actually, at 13, I was kind of the kid in the neighborhood that took in all the orphaned animals and stuff like that. And somebody brought me a couple of kestrels.
Okay.
And I had them at the house, kept them at the house. They stayed outside in a makeshift mews that I made underneath my porch. And once they were old enough to fly, and I didn't know anything about falconry at the time, but essentially I was hacking them back out to the wild. Once they were able to fly, I would put food on the banister of the porch for them and feed them every day. And they'd come into that and feed and then go out on their own and play for the day. And eventually they would all just end up disappearing and flying off.
Right. Yeah, it's like I said, it I know for me, it's always cool hearing about, people get started in this stuff, and especially the guys that have been doing it for a super long time,
right?
Like
right.
you and stuff, and so I mean that early. So how old were you again when you said that?
At that time, I was about 13, 14 years old.
Oh, geez.
And at the same time, I grew up in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I had grandparents that lived in Kansas City. There was a college kid that lived down the street from my grandparents, about 2 houses down, named Johnny Kennedy. And I saw him out in the front yard lure flying a red-tailed hawk. And after having those kestrels and kind of having a fascination with birds of prey already, I made my way down there and introduced myself, and he started taking me on hunts with him as long as I'd help him clean his hawk house when we came back. So I spent a couple years doing that with him, and then at 15, I took the test at 15 and got my permit and got my first red tail.
Yeah, no, that's funny. You already kind of had the exchange of service sponsorship.
Exactly.
Well, that's cool. I mean, everybody does different things to have to kind of earn their way into.
Exactly.
But so I mean, Missouri. So you were more of a Midwest guy then, to start off with.
I was. Yeah. But I've been down here in Texas since '77. I moved here after graduation to come to school down here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no. As far as just your early, start into falconry and everything. Then, I mean, did you, after you had those kestrels and stuff, did you kind of transition in, just the way that people usually do, or did you have kind of a different, way of kind of entering the sport?
Well, at that time, they didn't require sponsors, so I didn't have to go through any of that end. The exam was only 25 questions. Pretty easy test. It wasn't as difficult as it is now, so it wasn't real hard to get started and get into getting the permit and stuff. I had a friend of mine I went to school with, one of my best friends. His father was the game warden in town, so he helped me with the permits and the testing and all that stuff to get started. And pretty much after that, I just kind of went the route of, I moved down here right after high school, right after serving my 2-year apprenticeship. I moved down here and met some falconers not too far from here where I lived in Garland. And Don Rober is one of those, and Robert Hilton. And we used to fly Harris Hawks together quite a bit back in those early days.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's, like I said, I wonder all the time, kind of how things would have been had I had a chance to have some earlier experiences with, with falconry and stuff. And, I mean, I know for me, I wouldn't have been able to get into this if I would have had to have, or there's no way I would have been able to get into it any younger than what I did.
Right.
Which for me was right around 30, 31, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean it's kind of interesting. I mean, so you were mainly kind of wild hacking those kestrels then.
I was, and didn't really even know that's what that was called at that point. So.
Right. Well, at least you didn't, kind of learned the hard way with them. At least they didn't,
Yeah.
die on you or anything.
Yeah.
So did you already kind of by default figure out then what you were supposed to be feeding them and everything?
Yes, exactly. I started doing a lot of research and reading on it at that point, and found they needed a natural diet instead of store-bought beef and chicken hearts and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I made rudimentary sparrow traps and stuff like that, and trapped small birds for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're one of these guys then that knew it was going to be a part of your life then, like from a very young age.
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to last this long, but it has. But like I've been told by many other people, it's kind of addicting.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a smidge. It can be. Yeah. For whatever reason, I don't know. It's just something that it gets its hooks in you, and just, I don't know. That's why I usually jokingly tell people that come out with us that, just to stop.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where it's just like, the best piece of advice I think you can give sometimes, which, we'll cover that like we usually do at the end, but I jokingly give people advice, and only honestly half jokingly sometimes, just like, you'd be much better off with the rest of your life if you just forget this ever existed.
Exactly. And I tell all my aspiring apprentices that same thing.
How many apprentices have you had throughout your falconry career?
Wow. I'm going to guess 15.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Over the years.
Yeah. It's a lot of people.
None right now. I'm taking a little break. I just had to graduate up to the general level. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah, no, it's understandable. I mean, it's a big responsibility.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Well, so after you moved down here then, did you kind of stick with predominantly, dirt hawking and stuff, or did you?
I did for quite a few years. I'd always wanted to fly a peregrine, but I wasn't in a situation or an area where I could do that at the time. Mm-hmm. The area I lived in had plenty of cottontails and jackrabbits, so I started flying haresawks.
Cool. How many years did you do that?
Probably 20 years. Then I switched over to flying longwings when I moved into an area that had a little more game for flying the longwings.
A lot of ponds and stuff like that.
A lot of ponds, stuff like that. Yeah. So I've built up some of these places I've got permission on now I've had for over 20 years.
Well, at least they're still there.
Barely. They're doing construction right across the street from them, so now the ponds don't hold ducks as regular as they used to.
That sucks. It's a story of life now.
But you just have to add a couple new places every year to kind of make up for the ones you lose.
Yeah. So. Well, that's easier said than done, though, unfortunately.
I was lucky enough to pick up 2 more places this season.
Good.
So
good.
It's kind of helped.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's just becoming kind of a way of life now. We just keep losing more and more.
Yeah, habitat loss is a big problem for falconry right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I like talking about this sometimes, especially with people that we're fortunate enough, at least for them, to be able to be involved in this for as long as they have been, and kind of were in the glory years, so to speak. They were able to have all these different spots with all this game and stuff, and didn't have to work so hard because there was just more.
Exactly.
Exactly. Where do you kind of see things going? And what do you think can really be done to start mitigating some of that?
A lot of it's just growth in these areas. When I moved, I live in Gunter, and when I moved up there 13 years ago, it was out in the country. There was nothing out there. And now I've got a 900 house subdivision going in across the street from my house. So that's really the main problem. They're chopping up all this land and developing it into commercial and residential properties.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess there's probably, I know most people are kind of at a loss like me, whenever we talk about this kind of thing, it's like, is there anything that we can do? Really?
I don't really think there's much we can do about it. Growth's going to continue.
Yeah.
We moved up there 13 years ago because there was no growth up there.
Yeah.
And now here we are 13 years later, and it's just all around me. So I guess I'll end up doing what I did when I moved to Gunter, and I'll move closer to some areas where there's not as much growth and a little more areas to fly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Unfortunately, it sounds like that's all you can really do is just, unfortunately, just keep moving.
Exactly.
Just keep moving around and keep going to different places, for that hopefully don't have as much in the ways of development and stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually, is there going to be any more of those places eventually, you think?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
It's the big question.
It's kind of a bummer to think about, isn't it?
Maybe a little more room out west, but I don't think Midwest or South is going to be much room here in the next few years.
Probably not.
The way it's growing now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, it's a conundrum for sure. But I mean, overall, just from your point of view, I mean, with your own personal falconry over all these years, I mean, is it flying long wings that's given you the most satisfaction, you think, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Something I dreamed about when I was 16, 17 years old, reading all the falconry books and trying to absorb as much as I could for flying what I was flying at the time. I was just always had a fascination with peregrine falcons. Mm-hmm. So, very satisfying for me.
Yeah. And you've been flying peregrines for how many years now?
Probably close to 30 years.
30 years, man.
Mostly captive bred birds, but the last 10 years I've been flying strictly passage birds.
Okay. And I mean, just in kind of general, then, I mean, what's your overall preference? I mean, do you think that passage birds overall are, I mean, maybe not even so much in terms of better or worse, but I mean, what do you think is the most fun to fly? And I mean, what do you really see much in the ways of advantages, in one versus the other? Or?
Not necessarily. Even captive bred birds can be flown and trained well enough to fly just like a wild bird. Mm-hmm. I like flying passage birds because I don't have to go through all the extra steps of teaching them how to hunt, teaching them how to land on a pole, or basic stuff that they would learn out in the wild. Mm-hmm. They also have a little bit of a protection awareness of other birds of prey, whereas the captive breds don't. And I've had 2 captive bred birds killed by red tails while on a duck. Mm. The passage birds seem to have a little more sense about what's happening and will either leave the kill or turn and fight.
Just have a little bit more of a situational and environmental awareness about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, I know for me, if I was to try a long wing again at some point, I would probably try a passage bird again, like a bigger long wing, I should specify.
Right.
I think I'd probably prefer just trying a passage, as opposed to another either imprint or captive bred again.
I like the passages as well too, because they have an extra gear. It seems like they chase harder, they hunt harder.
Yeah,
they chase further.
Well, then they already kind of are in shape too.
Exactly.
And everything else. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just, I don't know enough about it yet. And I haven't had the chance to have enough personal experience with them yet to really have a preference one way or another. And I don't know if that time is ever going to come, unfortunately. I mean, I like long wings too. I mean, I feel like I'm more of a falcon guy. I think their personalities just mesh better with mine personally. But I do like squirrel hawking, I mean, there's that.
Squirrel hawking is fun too.
Yeah.
Squirrel hawking is fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, maybe someday whenever I'm able to, go to, travel more and travel more in the capacity in which I, is conducive to being able to fly birds and stuff. I mean, whatever. But I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, over the years, I mean, how many overall peregrines do you think you've flown in that amount of time then?
Not that many. A lot of the birds I've flown for 10, 12.
Yeah. Intermute several years and stuff. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a reason why, it's hard for guys to turn good birds loose.
It is.
Yeah.
I've turned several prairies loose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so your experiences then with prairies has kind of been more of the, I don't know, just the general perception then?
Yeah, it's been kind of a hit or miss. I had one prairie that was very, very good bird. The other ones I've had just didn't chase well and just didn't really put in a lot of effort. So I released them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the ironically enough, imprint prairie is one of a little bit of experience that I've had, with bigger long wings or whatever. But I mean, as far as just your overall experiences one versus the other, I mean, it's safe to assume that you're probably not ever going to go back and try another prairie again. Then
actually, I would.
Really?
I would.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, do you have it? I mean, so out of curiosity too, with all this long wing experience that you have, especially with the peregrines, I mean, do you prefer tiercels versus falcons, or, I mean, do you have a preference one way or the other?
I don't have a preference one way or another. I've flown 600-gram tiercels that kill big mallards just like females do. So really, for me, as far as hunting wise, there's no preference.
Yeah. What about personality wise?
Females are a little more laid back. I like that. Tiercels can tend to be a little high strung sometimes.
Okay.
And from my experience, the ones I've had.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of heard the other way around, from other people too. I mean, it just kind of goes to show you, I mean, whatever, how very different people's experiences can be,
Exactly.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know, the prairie that I've had there for that short period of time was a male, and I really liked his person. I mean, and ironically enough, that's one of the only birds that I've ever had that my wife actually liked too. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just because he was an imprint, and
Probably.
just a little bit more social, but so then, like, then your times flying long wings then has been mainly duck hawking then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll be retiring this fall and plan to go out west and try and fly some prairie chickens and grouse and things like that.
Yeah. And do more upland game type stuff than just ducks. Well, I mean, what have you done for a living all these years then?
I work for a large plumbing company. I'm a field supervisor.
Okay.
So I'm out in the field all day long checking on jobs and meeting with builders, architects, inspectors, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, has it allowed you to do falconry as much?
It's because my schedule is pretty flexible.
Okay. And has it been that way most of your career?
Yes. I kind of try to base my jobs on my falconry so I can have time to work the falconry in during the week as well. There's many times I pop the bird in my truck, my work truck, and take it with me in the mornings and stop on the way home and fly during the week.
Yeah. Well, and as far as, I mean, has it pretty much always been that way for the most part? I mean, or like even before you moved?
Yeah.
And relocated?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, sounds like you're another one of these guys then that was fortunate to have.
I have been. I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, being able to kind of go back and back and forth and do things however you really want, with around your falconry. That's
right.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
It's been great.
Yeah.
It's worked out real well for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. Like I said, I'm always happy for people whenever they're able to have a job and a career like that. And it's really, yeah, I'm envious, I mean, I feel like I'm fortunate to be able to at least do it,
right.
4 or 5, however many times a week, really, honestly, because I work 12-hour night shifts. So, I mean, if I want to sacrifice sleep, I can,
you can do it. Well,
pretty much every day.
We all make those sacrifices sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as, like your approach to, like, especially, like passage peregrines and stuff. I mean, like, out of curiosity, of the birds that you have flown, I mean, over the years, what's your preference in, whenever you're training one, manning one, you get one, I mean, what's been your preference overall with, like how soon do you like them free flying and hunting and everything else?
There's a lot of guys out there that train these passage birds and they say they can get them flying and hunt within 2 weeks. But a lot of those guys lose those birds. I take a little more extra time manning my bird. I think it helps in keeping the bird around in the early stages. And it also helps build a better relationship between you and the bird. Mm-hmm. So I spend a little extra time manning my bird. I don't try to get in any big hurry. I kind of let the bird go at its own pace. I've learned to kind of read my birds, see where they're at, and tell just by reading the birds and the body language, what they're going to do, how they're going to act, how they're going to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So definitely a little extra time manning is the main thing I do with them. That is a little different than most people do.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think on average, maybe like a month or so that you...
Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Just like you would for a red tail.
Gotcha.
And then by the time I get out in the field and start actually flying her, she's good and steady and I don't have any issues.
Cool. Well, I mean, there's plenty of guys that fly red tails too that even like to take even less time than
Exactly.
Yeah, there's guys that I know that's just like, if they're not ready in like 9 days, 2 weeks or whatever, then it's getting cut loose one way or the other.
Yeah. And I've learned that over the years too. I mean, if I've tried it getting in a hurry and trying to rush things through it, but it seems like there's always complications with that, and you always run into problems with that. So I take a little extra time.
Yeah. And do you think overall, I mean, taking that little extra time, I mean, there's guys guys and gals sometimes that will argue that the more time that you spend, in the training process and stuff, that can be a, deterrent,
harder to transition over
to transition and stuff. I mean, what is your experience with that? I mean,
I think a lot of that depends on the bird.
Yeah.
There are some guys that get the birds out early and get them on game and have very good success with them and have no issues. But I've seen a couple other guys too that have done the quick route and have lost birds the first time out. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right though. I mean, all this stuff is so individual, case dependent, I mean, each bird is so different and stuff. I mean, you can almost apply that to anything in the training process, I guess, if you really want to.
And it's not that you can't lose one after 4 to 6 weeks, because they can still fly off at any time. There's no really time frame that's set in stone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there is that too. Yeah, there's nothing that says that it's ever, always for sure going to come back.
Right.
Because it doesn't have to.
Exactly. That's what worries me every time I fly my bird in thermals.
So you're a guy that likes doing that too?
I do. And she loves flying thermals too.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not really a guy that is a huge, I mean, there's a lot of guys that fly long wings I know that refuse to do thermals and stuff. And, they're...
I used to be that way.
Strictly sun up and sun down kind of.
Yeah. I used to be that way. The last 4 or 5 years, I've kind of transitioned over to kind of accepting that if they're going to go up in a thermal, they're going to go up. If they don't come back, they don't come back. And then I get to buy a new GPS transmitter.
Yeah. I mean, it's always fun shelling out the money for that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The bird I've got now is real reliable, though. I don't really have any concerns with her in a thermal. I've never had to go on a telemetry chase or a chase for her anywhere. She's very loyal and stays close by, and
that's good.
Never had any issues. So I started flying her in thermals a little more about 4 years ago.
So it's more of just an overall trust thing for you then, like as far as your mindset goes. I mean, out of curiosity, what was the thing that kind of made you start to reconsider and transition out of the old mindset?
Just seeing the bird that I have now do it and trusting her that she's still going to do her job. And so far she's not let me down. So that's why I keep doing it with her.
Yeah. But you wouldn't necessarily do it with every bird,
Not necessarily. I would gauge the bird's ability and how it acts in those thermals and stuff.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I can see it being a case by case basis for sure. Yeah. But I mean, there's some people though that I know that's just the way they prefer to do it, no matter what, one way or the other. And
I don't have a preference to that either. I'll fly early mornings. I'll fly late afternoons. I mix it up. I don't just fly just thermaling times. I mix it up quite a bit.
That's good to know.
And I flew right at sunlight this morning. So
yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, everybody's got different ways to go about doing stuff. Right. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I have a dog in the fight one way or the other. I'll never be able to sit here and say that. Although, I mean, I will say though, the one mistake that I can say that I made personally whenever I was trying to learn the basics of flying a long wing was getting too many, opinions or too much information from too many different people. Yep. And I don't think I'll ever do that again.
No, that would be kind of confusing probably because every falconer's got their own opinion on how things should be done. Yeah,
and especially when it comes to flying long wings, it's like it's one of those things. It's a whole completely different, learning process, skill set, and everything else. And I know for me, it was tough trying to figure out really how to apply all those different things in my particular situation. And I mean, do you deal with? I mean, do you like drone birds at all, or like do you just use
these passes birds? I don't.
Yeah.
They already know how to go up, and they know what the game is. You just got to get them out and start putting game under them.
Yeah.
Once they figure out you're out there to help and you're putting ducks up for them, they'll go up.
Sure. And as far as, I mean, the getting that relationship built in, I mean, do you primarily start with pigeons and stuff then, or what do you?
I very sparingly use pigeons. Okay. I don't like birds checking in the field.
Yeah, there is that, I guess.
So I don't use too many pigeons. I get the bird outside. I exercise the bird to the lure, make sure it's coming on the lure on the creance real good. And I'll take it out for a couple of flights, not putting on any kind of game, just to get it out and get her flying and exercising and circling around me and staying close. And then after a couple of times doing that, I just start taking them to the ponds and flushing ducks under them.
Yeah. And then once you get the association with you,
once they put two and two together, then they start actively going up and getting a better pitch, and they learn the game pretty fast.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things I like talking with longwingers about too is overall pitch and stuff. I mean, what's kind of your preference when it comes to, a lot of that type of stuff too? Or
kind of depends on the pond. I like flying bigger water. So if I'm flying bigger water, I like her to be up 700 to 800 feet or higher.
Okay.
That way she can contain that airspace depending on which way the ducks go out, or if they go out two different ways. Or the smaller ponds, I'm not so much concerned about pitch. Her average pitch on any pond is about 300 to 500 feet. The smaller ponds, the bigger water, she goes up a lot higher.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's one thing that I always love getting different input on, because I'm sure being a longwinger for so long, you've heard all the different
Yep.
theories, opinions, and everything else, and all that kind of stuff. And I know for me, I mean, I would be thrilled even if I could just get one, to catch a duck period or whatever I mean, even if it's just a few hundred feet or whatever. And
having a bird that goes up 2,000 feet and stoops is pretty to watch, and it's great, and I love watching it. But in the areas that I live in, especially this time of year, red tails are everywhere. And if that bird's up that high and catches that duck 300 or 400 yards away from that pond, that red tail could get to my bird a lot quicker than I could get to my bird.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear horror stories when it comes to that kind of stuff, and especially the guys that are flying different types of game out west and in general, and with losing falcons to golden eagles and stuff. Right. Doesn't matter if it's a golden eagle, red tail, or whatever. It's always going to suck, obviously.
It does.
But,
it does.
But I mean, I've heard of people losing birds more to red tails than almost any other species.
I've lost a Tiercel Harris hawk and a Tiercel peregrine to red tails, both while they were on a kill.
Yeah, that sucks.
And I couldn't get to them in time.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's hard. It's tough.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Especially when you're sitting there watching it all unfold right in front of you.
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, that's why I think in some ways, I mean, seeing, getting a chance to see like, snipe hawking with peregrines and stuff recently, and things like that, different forms of hunting where it's a little bit more in front of you.
Right.
And doesn't go quite as far away.
Exactly.
I think that's might be a reason why I find that a little bit more appealing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. And I don't know what it is either. I mean, the times that I've had a chance to see duck hawking too, it's just like you hear it and you kind of see it, but you don't. I mean, there's been so many times where it's just like I didn't even see because the stoop was so far away.
Right.
And the hit and the impact was so far away, I didn't even get to hardly see it,
Yeah. So every year we do a Ducks Unlimited auction winter hunt. We donate a falconry hunt at the Ducks Unlimited banquets in the local areas around where we live. And the auction winners come out to fly with us. We'll get 4 or 5 falconers together and we'll go out for the day. And we always tell these guys, when you're watching this, it happens very fast. Either watch the ducks or watch the falcon. You can't watch both and see what happens. I usually tell people just watch the falcon. Don't worry about the ducks. Let me worry about the ducks. You watch the falcon if you want to really see a flight. And if they don't, like you said, if you're trying to watch it all at one time, you're going to miss probably 80% of the flight.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, especially the guys that love flying the super high pitches, it's really tough sometimes to keep track of where the falcon is.
And it's even harder if you're trying to film it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I like wearing a GoPro when I hunt a lot. And I discovered really quickly that, whenever you're watching longwings, like GoPros are almost all but worthless, half the time, just because it's, the bird's so high, the stoop happens so often, so far away. And, I mean, it's great for squirrel hawking and other, dirt hawking and stuff or whatever. But, I mean, it's unfortunately, when it comes to the long wing stuff, it's a little bit, almost pointless.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, how many years have you been doing that bird hunt thing then with
probably 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of guys that I know that do something similar to that, kind of falconry experience in exchange for, like a charitable donation type of thing or whatever. Right. But yeah, no, it's fun. It can be fun bringing new people out sometimes, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
Well, with the Ducks Unlimited guys, they're all gun hunters.
Yeah.
So they're kind of familiar with the ducks.
Yeah.
And doing that kind of stuff, they just get to see a different method of hunting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's different, I guess, whenever it's kind of other hunters that are already at least a little bit aware, of how the,
Yeah. And 75% of these guys call us the next season. Hey, can we join you again this year? They enjoy getting out.
Yeah, you're just hoping that, hey, can we get out with you again next year? By the way, I have a nice new spot that you may or may not know about.
Right.
You ever gotten any new spots that way before?
I have. Matter of fact, a guy that wanted to come join me 2 weeks ago sent me a message, wanted to join me and bring his 2 kids. There's a guy came out with us a couple of years ago, and he came out and we went and hunted. And he says, well, hey, I got permission on a property right down the street from you down here. Got a bunch of ponds on it. Let me call this guy. Maybe you guys can get in there. So he called the guy and says, oh, sure, no problem. Give him the gate codes. So I've gained permission like that on several ponds.
That's great. Yeah. I wish that there were more like, cattle and like, farm dairy type ponds and stuff closer to where I'm sure there probably are somewhere, but I don't know where they are close enough to me to at least within closer than like an hour radius to, I don't have, unfortunately, 12 ponds that are close to me that I'm aware of that I could, try that on a consistent basis.
I've been real lucky in that aspect. Most of my ponds are within 30 minutes of my house, and I've probably got 20 of them.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. I figured, it probably takes anywhere between half a dozen to a dozen just to be able to, to not completely waste your gas.
That's over years of acquiring permission on those places too. Like I said, some of those spots I've been flying for 20 years. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Well, at least you got them. And
for now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I enjoy it while it lasts. It sounds like though that, for the most part, you've had a pretty decent, go at it.
I have.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as your, I don't know, the other aspects of, have you had any more seasons that you think that are more memorable than others as far as, how many ducks on average do you take a season?
Usually 40, between 35 and 40 ducks a year, especially with this bird I've got now. She's more consistent than any of the other birds I've flown.
Yeah. Consistent in what way?
Percentages of catches versus misses. She runs at about 85% success rate. Most seasons.
Yeah. And as far as, pretty reliable also, usually does what you want her to.
She does. I've never had to chase her down, and she's never flown off on me. Pretty loyal bird.
That's good. Yeah. That was the one. I don't know, there's a couple of days I can remember, where I would sometimes drone that prairie that I had was not even like a mile away from a nice sized river.
Yeah.
And the only way you can get across it was to go like 20, 30 minutes into, another town, cross bridge,
over and then come back.
And one day he did that, and it's like what should have been like a 10-minute retrieve turned into an hour and a half because I had to go down and drive across the bridge and then track him down. The GPS, I drove right up to him. Started swinging the lure, he came right back.
Lucky.
Yeah. But is there how many times have you had to buy a new GPS transmitter then?
None so far. I've been lucky.
Sounds like it. Well, I don't know, man. It sounds like you've gotten off. I don't want to say easy by any stretch. I don't think anybody that pursues falconry gets off easy, so to speak.
I don't know about easy. I've had to work for it. But.
Yeah, less. I don't know, not to say that anybody doesn't have bad luck, because we all do too, but it sounds like overall, at least with the long wings, you haven't had, I mean, aside from the 2 birds that got killed with the,
Right.
I mean, but,
I've had real good success with long wings and really enjoy flying them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there any, I mean, aside from the upland game type stuff, I mean, is there anything that you wish was closer that you could do more often? I mean, have you wanted to try any form of falconry over the years that you haven't had a chance to, or?
That would be eagle falconry.
Yeah. In what aspect of that?
Just flying jackrabbits, stuff like that. I've been partial to eagles. I've worked with a couple rehab birds and like working with them.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? I mean, aside from just the overall allure of the fact that it's an eagle, I mean,
that's it. That's it.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. But hanging around with people that actually fly them, I realize that it's probably a little more work than what I'm ready to get involved with at the age I'm at now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and I mean, overall, it just seems like you've, like I said, I think all we can really hope for is that we're able to continue to do it for as long as we can and stuff too. But I mean, speaking of which, I mean, I know this is something else that we were kind of talking about before we started recording, but I mean, it sounds like that you've been, blessed with good fortune when it comes to, the aspects of your health and stuff.
I have. I'm blessed with some good friends as well.
Yeah.
Made many good friends through falconry, and I consider all of them family.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind sharing, I mean, kind of talk about your experience. And I'm bringing this up because I think this is another really positive example of how good our overall community can kind of be with some of those relationships and stuff. But I mean, if you don't mind sharing, I mean, share what that experience was for you.
So in 2013, I was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. Mm-hmm. It's hereditary in my family. It's taken many generations of my family. I was diagnosed in 2013. I went on dialysis for probably 5.5 years, on the transplant list as well. Several people tried to go down and get tested. The falconry community was so supportive. Several Texas Hawking Association members went down and got tested to see if they were a blood match. Not so much luck. And then I'm not sure if you know Brandy Nickerson. She was NAFA secretary for a few years, secretary treasurer for a few years. I've known her for over 30 years when she first got into falconry. She went down and got tested, was a perfect blood match. Doctors asked if we were related because it was that perfect of a blood match. So she went through all the testing. They denied her because she was a little bit overweight. Her body mass index was too much. So they denied her. She went home, and within a year, she lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
Came back and tried to do it again. This time they rejected her because they found a spot on her kidney. So another 2 years go by. She's having a specialist watch her kidney, and they made a diagnosis that there was nothing. It was just a spot on her kidney. There was no tumor, nothing like that. So they wrote a letter from my doctors, and they accepted her. And then 2 weeks later, I got my transplant. So this all transpired over about a 3 or 4 year period with her trying to donate to me. Like I said, the response from the falconry community was great through all this. As you can imagine, with all the hospitalizations and the dialysis treatments, financially it was very struggling and hard on us. Texas Hawking Association, at one of the annual picnics, they did a raffle for our benefit and raised over $7,000 for us.
Yeah, and I mean, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to the actual treatments and things like that, 7,000 isn't going to go a long way, but it sure as hell can. I mean, when it comes to all the ancillary expenses,
exactly.
And
that's what it was for. Back and forth to the hospital, and wife having to stay in a hotel room because I was in the hospital down there for 3 or 4 days. And, so it definitely helped with that aspect of things.
No, that's incredible.
But like I said, there's overwhelming support from the falconry community when I went through that.
Well, I mean, it means, I guess, people like you a little bit then.
Well, I hope so. I think we all hope for that.
Well, I mean, that's great. No, I mean, and I appreciate you kind of being transparent with that because, I think, I know for me, and I was talking to some people about this earlier, I mean, for me, it's been really humbling seeing how willing most falconers are, despite, despite, sometimes the ups and downs that our, community has on occasion, how I think even more so sometimes than even other kind of hunting community cultures and things like that, just how much we're willing to help and
I agree.
Just
I agree.
you continue to be there for each other, when it comes to, just that social factor. And I know that the community at large and even in other countries has been really, helpful with me and stuff too. And trying to do this and everything as well. And I just think that's great. And, I mean, I really hope that, it stays that way.
I hope it does too. I really hope it does too.
Yeah.
A lot of camaraderie between the falconers here in this area.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I mean, as far as your overall health and stuff now, I mean, everything holding up okay?
Fantastic.
And,
fantastic.
Nice.
I've never felt better.
Outstanding. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And, I mean, like I said, I know that, that had to be, I mean, it goes without saying, but I know it had to be a huge relief for you.
It was. Yeah. It was. It took a big weight off my shoulders.
I bet. So you said you're going to get to retire though pretty soon?
I'm retiring in September. I turn 65 in September, and I'm going to retire and call it good.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll get a chance to do what you want to do with the other upland stuff, later this year. Then.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, that's cool. When
everybody says something to my wife about me retiring, her line is always, he's just going to fly his birds more.
Well, of course. Yeah,
that's what I told her. So, well, yeah.
Yeah, another type thing. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I mean, before we start kind of wrapping this up a little bit then, though, I want to get one or two, like, really more of the memorable stories that you've had throughout your career, in falconry. And everybody always has at least one or two stories that always tend to, at least for the most part, pop into the forefront of their mind, when it comes to things that they remember and had an impact on them and stuff.
I've had so many. It's hard to pick just one.
Well, I mean, share a couple or three. It doesn't matter to me.
Probably my first time hunting with an eagle, watching an eagle hunt.
Really?
With Lauren McGow. Yeah. Lauren's a good friend. Been out with her on occasions at meets, stuff like that. I've handled her eagles on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
So that really got me turned on to flying an eagle. But like I said, I realize at this point, my age and the area I'm in, I just don't have the time or the area to do that. But that was very inspiring for me, watching the eagles fly jackrabbits, stuff like that.
Yeah. What aspect of it? Just the way, I mean, they're kind of catered a little bit to each other or so tailored for each other or what?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. I didn't know if there was a specific, I don't know. Once again, we already kind of touched on the whole, just the fact that it's an eagle, but at the same time, I mean, I didn't know if there's a particular aspect about their flight style or anything that just really appealed to you, or if it was just more.
What really appeals to me is they're so big and they look like they're moving so slow, but they cover ground so quick.
Yeah.
And it's an illusion. When you're watching them fly, it's an illusion. You think they're not covering any ground, but they cover ground really fast.
Yeah, no, I've heard that about them. It seems like since they're such a giant like tank, looking thing, just kind of looks like they're not really flying very fast, but they really are.
I've been out with about 3 different eagle falconers, and it just seems like that's always the case. Is they seem like they're moving so slow and cumbersome, but they're actually covering a whole lot of ground in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Whenever you went out with Lauren and saw it, I mean, was there one particular flight when you were that really stood out to you?
There was. We were flying in Killeen at one of the THA meets, and we had a big wide open area with maybe 2 or 3 cedar trees in the middle of this pasture. And we kicked up a jack. We had a line of people walking on both sides of her, and kicked up a jack, and this thing ran probably 100 yards flat out, just straight out. Eagle right behind it. Eagle went to put in to grab the jackrabbit. Jackrabbit jumped about 10 feet in the air and avoided the eagle. And it's not always the catch that's exciting. I really like just seeing the flight.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, some of the best flights I think most falconers will ever see in their lives are the ones where the quarry's not caught.
It gives you a bigger appreciation of the quarry.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure, and I think that most falconers do have a true appreciation as much for the quarry as much as the birds. Because I mean,
I think most do. Yes.
Yeah. Well, without one, you can't have the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as far as your personal, like falconry and flights that you've had in the past, I mean, was there any particular one, as far as your birds that you've flown and stuff that sticks out?
The bird I have now, we were flying a pond that had about a dozen mallards on it. This was her second season. She had kind of ignored mallards up to that point, a little intimidated by them. But she had some experience behind her in her second season. She went up higher than she normally went. That was kind of my first foray into letting her fly thermals. She went up extremely high. She came down GPS. According to GPS, she was moving 140 mile an hour.
Jeez.
And just crushed this mallard about 40 feet up in the sky and just dropped dead out of the sky. I've never been able to get another flight like that since.
Oh, man. I bet that smack was just epic.
It was. You could hear it from a long way off.
There is something about just that stoop and that smack, man. That it just sounds like a Major League Baseball just crack off a bat,
exactly.
Wooden bat,
Yep.
God.
And that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It does.
I really wish that I could hear that more, man. I really do. I wish that I was able to have that more in my personal falconry too. Maybe someday. We'll see. But I mean, is there any other thing that you can think of as far as another experience that you've had that was really impactful for you?
Mainly the most impactful thing to me was other falconers I've met and learning from them as I went. When I grew up in the 70s, there were not a lot of falconers around me. The nearest one was 3 hours away. So I had to kind of learn on my own. So the biggest impact on me was other falconers that I met once I moved down here and started flying with other falconers, because there were many falconers here when I moved here. And just the impact that I got from them and learning how to fly, especially longwings. I was mentored by quite a few good longwing guys before I got into flying longwings. And that had a big impact on my falconry.
As far as just the overall guidance that,
guidance
how to do
and how to do it and ways to, and the biggest thing they imparted to me was not every bird is the same. Mm-hmm. You figure out what works best for you and your bird. Mm-hmm. And it was probably some of the best advice I ever got. Yeah. And that would be the best advice I could give.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just ready to ask you. Overall, is that the thing that you can think of then that would be probably one of the better things to pass on to people?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just learn your personal circumstances and situation and adapt and mold to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not every bird's going to be the same. They're not all going to respond to the same type of training or the same type of stimulus.
Sure.
You just have to kind of read the bird and adjust your training as the bird accepts it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I said, it's always good advice, and I think that every falconer at some point kind of gets caught in that whole cookie cutter type of trap sometimes. Right. We all think that just because we can do it one way with one bird, sometimes that the other bird.
That's not always the case. Yeah, all birds, they all have a different personality and they all respond different.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Well, this has been cool, and getting a chance to hear about, that adversity and stuff that you had to overcome, and not just your falconry life, but your life, it's everybody goes through things, and has to, just find a way to continue to adapt and overcome in any circumstance that they're in. And I appreciate you being willing to, to share that.
I appreciate that.
Because especially for, sometimes I think everybody can kind of get disheartened sometimes or kind of come a little down or whatever. But especially for people that are looking to get into this or for all the things that we warn people about in getting into this community and this practice of falconry and this sport, I think it's just as important for people to hear about the positive things as the other things.
Right.
So, thanks for being willing to share. And is there any other thing that you want to share before we kind of call this good, or?
Not that I can think of right off the top of my head.
You going to try for some ducks in the morning?
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
I think we're going to fly tomorrow and then Sunday morning and then try and head back Sunday after flying, try to beat this weather.
Yeah.
Before it starts getting too bad.
I keep hearing about this weather and stuff.
That's what they keep saying, but we'll see. It changes every day.
Yeah.
It's Texas.
Yeah. Well, Midwest weather isn't any better. It's just as,
I know.
Just crazy and schizophrenic sometimes, But anyway, I appreciate you, Jay. Like I said, thanks again for being willing to share.
I appreciate you taking the time to visit.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to go hawking at some point. I don't know what the agenda is going to be for in the morning, but we'll see what happens.
You've had a busy day with interviews today.
Yeah. Well, 3 to 4 is kind of where I usually have to force myself to draw the line.
Yeah.
I start getting a little tapped after that.
Yeah.
But,
Jimmy and Kyle didn't give you any trouble, did they?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, they kept themselves in line.
Okay.
It's all good.
Both great guys.
No, yeah, everybody's been great so far, and it's been great getting to know all of you. Like I said, I appreciate the opportunity and appreciative of getting the chance to help share all your stories. Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
All right. Well, I guess we can get off here and have another beer or something.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Jay.